Chicago, baby. Chicago, baby.
What is up, my fellow sackers? So you guys have been asking for it, the best cards to deal against Forgs. If you guys have been living under a rock and we're not keeping up with Edison, the deck that I've shown on the screen is the new Forg deck. Player named Alasdair has won Ultimate Time Wizard and has really popularized this deck. And most, if not all, winning builds that I've seen, or successful builds that I've seen that play this deck, are pretty much running this list card for card. There's a few different exceptions, like some players play Bubble Man Future Fusion and the side deck can be a little different, but most of the time it is this exact list. And notice the side deck. The side deck is really geared towards changing out the main engine of the deck towards more of a control-oriented Frog Monarch deck. Like you see the Kaises and the Breakers and the bunch of trap cards. So just keep in mind that I'm making this tier list based off this list, because this is like what you'll see most of the time. If the deck continues to evolve and maybe the side deck changes and they figure out another way to side, then obviously the cards on this list will change in the rankings. But for now, I'm just basing it off this. Okay, starting off with S tier. So S tier cards, these cards I think are not only high impact, but they're also flexible. Like they're good into other matchups. So like these cards that you see here, you've probably seen them before, very commonplace. DD Crow is probably the best card against Fishborg in my opinion. Not only is it a hand trap, so it gets around the Raigeki breaks, the Heavy Storm, Trunade, Mystical Space Typhoon, etc. It just hits the important pieces like Avarice and Fishborg. So you just wait for them to Avarice or use Fishborg. They pay cost for Fishborg, or Avarice just fizzles. Keep in mind, it doesn't hit Salvage completely, because Salvage will still act or resolve as much as possible, so they'll still get the other target they pick with Salvage, but you could still at least hit the Substitute if they like pick Substitute Swap Frog or something. Next Mask of Restrict. So I think this card is going to end up more and more side decks, because not only is it good against Fishborg, it's also good against Gigavice. So if this card's up and they're transformation siding, they can't Caius you, they can't Substitute you. The only part that really sucks is if for some reason they have Duplock and Unifrog up already, or if they have Duplock and Flip Flop and you don't really have a good answer to that. Mask of Restrict will prevent them from going off on you more, but you still have to answer the Duplock, so that is the one downside. You know, obviously if they just already Unga Bunga on you, this card's not going to do much. Next, Deck Devi. I should probably actually move Deck Devi and Herald together, because these cards are really good if your deck can support them. They play many frogs, which are almost all under 1500 except Dash Frog. So this Deck Devi is obviously an insane card against them. It sucks though, because if they have Salvage, you hit all the frogs, but then they just Salvage back Substitute, they have Treeborn up, and then they just get to go off anyway. So it does suck that their deck is very resilient to Deck Devi, even though it hits a lot of their cards. They still have Salvage and Avarice. And then the Herald, if you have a play a Fairy deck, hitting Substitute is really insane. It probably just ends their turn if they try to go off with Substitute, and then you Herald Substitute. They pay cost by tripping a frog, and then you get rid of Substitute, so that's really good. And then Fossil Dyna, obviously this card's insane. Keep in mind that if somehow this probably doesn't really happen against frogs as much, but if they do have like a face down flip flop frog and you flip Fossil Dyna, I don't know how that's really going to happen, but flip flop frog is recognized as, if it was special summoned by Substitute, even though it was face down, the game still remembers it was special summoned, so Fossil Dyna would be able to destroy flip flop frog. More on that later with another card I'll talk about. And then Oppression, obviously their deck tries to spam special summoning. This card is lower on the S tier because when they transformation side into Kaius and Breaker, this card's not as good, whereas Fossil Dyna still stops Treeborn from coming out at least, so Fossil Dyna still prevents Kaius. But Breaker really is, in my opinion, a really scary card in the Forg side deck. It stops a lot of the cards you would bring in against them, so you do have to watch out for that. Okay, next going off the A tier, these cards are also really good into Forgs in my opinion, but they're probably not as easily sided in your side deck because they're more niche, but they could still be covered for maybe like Gigaplan or some other random matchups here and there. So starting off, Chain Disappearance. This card kind of solos Forgs, I'm not gonna lie, if it goes off. It has to go off though. But yeah, if you hit Substitute or Fishborg, they kind of just lose. Like if you hit Substitute, they can't play the game. And then if you hit Fishborg Blaster, they can still maybe like Deathfrog train rail you, but other than that, the really only other power cards are Caius. So if you hit Fishborg, you're also in a really, really good spot. Some builds I've seen side Burial, but that's really uncommon for most of the parts. I think if you resolve this, you're in a really, really good spot. And then Karma Cut is kind of just like a worse Chain Disappearance. It doesn't hit the copies in deck, but it hits the ones in graveyard. The thing is, this card is more flexible in other matchups. Like you could side this in against Machina or like GBs. I don't know. This card's really, really flexible if your deck can support the discard one. Next, Skill Drain. I think this card also kind of solos if your deck can play it. Like they just can't play the game really. Like Substitute's not going to be able to go off. Their synchros won't do anything. Self-insulates itself against Breaker because Breaker can't destroy it. Caius can't destroy it. So I do think this card is really good. Keep in mind that if you do play it, effects still activate. So for example, if they summon Caius, Caius would still activate and then they can target something. And if they get rid of Caius or get rid of your skill drain, Caius would still banish the target they ended up targeting. So just keep that in mind. Next, Cold Wave. Spoiler, I'm kind of really high on this card. It's currently in my tentative side deck because this card supports a lot of game plans, in my opinion, against the combo decks, like, because you just want to kill them, right? And then, so if you Cold Wave, they can't use their defensive traps. Their defensive traps are now stuck, so they can't bring back Treeborn. You do a bunch of damage, and the next turn, what are they going to do? If they can't bring back Treeborn, they have to use a lot of cards, and they can't use their spell cards to kind of combo off on you, summon Caius. In theory, in my head, this card is really, really good against Forgs and Giga. So, I don't know. Test it. Let me know how you guys think about Cold Wave. I'm pretty hyped on this card. Next, Needle Stealing. This card is also a card that's good against Giga, and I think it's also good against Forgs. Assuming the Forgs are trying to do their main game plan of using Fishborg and Substitute to make a really big board, you just wait for them to overextend at an opportune moment and then just Needle Stealing them. Not much to say. Like, card's really, really good and it's playing a lot of future formats for good reason. Card is chainable, just insane card. Jowgen. So this is the card I was alluding to earlier with Fossil Dyna. This card is one of the few cards that can like solo answer dupe flip flop, because if flip flop was summoned off Substitute, then you just normal summon Jowgen, pitch a random card, and blow their whole board. They have to be able to summon Breaker or a Kaiku or like any frog to get over it next turn. But if you have any defense for it and can protect it for a turn, then switch to defense, it kind of cooks. It is really hard to get to that point though, in my opinion, because you should probably be sighting out your battle traps. So it's hard to defend. But if your deck really struggles with dupe flip, which I think most decks do, this card could be considered. This card also is good into Giga. If they've established a board, you summon Jowgen, wipe their board, they came and bring back a Giga plant off the supervise. So yeah, I think Jowgen stocks are up, but it's just how badly do you want to side hate for the combo decks. Next, King Tiger Wanghu. So at first I was initially thinking this card should just be a worse Fossil Dyna, but the more I thought about it, I was just like, wait, doesn't this card just do the same stuff as Fossil Dyna against Fishborg Frog? And the more I'm thinking about it, I can't think of a card other than Deathfrog. Like if they summon Substitute. Wait, no, you don't get priority off Substitute. Actually, what am I smoking? Dude, I don't know. Like they don't get you don't get priority off Substitute Lonefire with this card, because King Tiger is mandatory, so it will immediately trigger as soon as Substitute Lonefire summons. So dude, if I'm missing something, someone let me know in the comments, but I think this card is actually like kind of good against Fishborg. Like I don't think there's a use case that Fossil Dyna has over this card. I don't know. Yeah, someone let me know. And then Eradicator. So I know a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, a lot of value players are thinking, oh man, I'm gonna play an Eradicator build. I do think the Eradicator build is stronger than regular value against Fishborg for sure. However, you are wasting a lot of slots to use Eradicator. Like, I think if you're going to go the Eradicator build, you should at least have one your main, one your side. And then you have to play stuff like Fusilier, which I don't think is very good. Like, that card kind of just ass. And you have to draw Eradicator before they've gone off. So you have to open Greffer with Vayu or Elfin. Makes your Blackwing matchup worse. I don't know if it's worth it. I honestly haven't tested it enough. I just don't like the virus build. I'm not really high on it. And countering degen with even more degen to sacrifice your regular matchups just doesn't seem good to me. Like, I think a lot of people are overblowing how bad Fishborg and Giga are going to be. I'd be really surprised if Fishborg and Giga have a larger meta share than Blackwing Vayu. At least for now. Like, we'll see in the future what happens. I don't know what's going to happen like 6 months from now. Anything could happen, but at least for right now, I'd be shocked if the next tournament, like, if Fishborg becomes the most played deck. And I feel like, and this isn't a jab at Fishborg players, but people are also thinking that, oh man, like, there's just like 30 Alistairs out there. The deck is really, really hard to play. I don't think anyone, or I shouldn't say anyone, very few people are at that level. So we'll see what ends up happening in the future once people start mashing the deck more. But people need to realize, like, Blackwing Vayu are still here to stay. You need to make sure you still can beat those decks. So Vanity's Fiend, so this card is better than Fossil Dyna if it comes out, right? It's just bigger stats. However, they're playing 3 Raigeki Break, Mirror Force, Torrential, a bunch of traps. They're playing a bunch of ways to out this. So I don't think it's as worth it because, you know, you have to tribute a monster, obviously. So it's a bigger commitment and they could easily have an out to it. That being said, it can run away the game, or you can run away with the game if they don't draw an out for it. But I just think Fossil Dyna is better, especially with like Giga running around. Like, setting Fossil Dyna is like invaluable to me. And then Anti-Spell Fragrance. This card actually can cook, in my opinion, because it kind of protects itself in your other floodgates by itself. Because you don't need to fear heavy for a turn. So, like, by activating Anti-Spell and then like setting like 2-3 back row or whatever, you're kind of insulated. And then depending on your deck, like for example, like I play Vayu, so then my Raikos can get value. Like, they have to now set their Salvage, Avarice, Mores, or whatever. So my Raiko can get value now. If you're playing Blackwing, you can start Icarusing. If you're playing Gladiator Beasts, you know, this card's I think already sided in some Gladiator Beast side decks, but it gets even more value now because now you can just Bestiari, Geyseris, pop everything, and not let them play. So this card actually might cook. I haven't tested it enough to know for sure if it's worth a slot, because other than Forg and Giga, I don't think it really goes into anything else. But that's kind of the deal with the meta nowadays. You're kind of just like playing cards for the combo decks and non-combo decks. So I think this card actually kind of cooks. Okay, so starting the B tier, these cards are not as great as the S and A tier, but I think they're worth mentioning. So starting off, I have Goyo Garden here. This is just here because I want to let people know. I've seen a few replays where the Fishborg player ends up going Colossal Armory Arm on the opponent's Goyo Guardian, and then the Goyo Guardian player scoops. Well, newsflash, you cannot Colossal Armory Arm a Goyo Guardian because Goyo Guardian will just take the Colossal Fighter. So yeah, don't do that. Goyo Guardian is safe into a Colossal Armory OTK, so just heads up if you like want to extend into a Fishborg player but don't want to get Colossal Armory Arm, and you can afford to just leave a Goyo Guardian in face-up attack mode and get in there with that. You can't get Colossal Armory Arm OTK, so good to know. Next, Power Filter. I've seen some people hype up this card, but I don't think it's that good. It only stops the special summons of 1000 attack or less monsters, so they can easily play around that. Breaker, Caius are also all cards, so I don't think it's that good. Possessed Dark Soul. So if you are really struggling outing a dupe block, you could potentially side this card in, but it doesn't stop the flip-flop frog, and it wastes your normal summon. So, like, while it is a plus, like, 3, right? Like a plus 3, which is really, really good. I don't know if it's enough, which is crazy to think about, but depending on what deck you're playing, you might be able to run it and justify that, but I think most decks, you're better off siding in a card above. Our next, Rivalry of Warlords. This card, in theory, is actually pretty good. They can't really synchro into anything, but keep in mind that if they are doing the transformation side, in Edison, you are allowed to tribute Treeborn Frog for Caius, even if rivalries face up, so that lowers the impactfulness of this card, in my opinion. Soul Release, I think a lot of people are signing this card in, and I actually don't think it's that good. So it's only good if you have it when they've done the substitute combo and they aren't comboing off. So you need to draw it right after they substitute combo, and you have to be able to use it in like they have to go into like dupe block or like something that's more passive, not as aggro. Because like let's say they go into a substitute combo and they're comboing off on you, and they have like 2 or 3 synchros on the field. Well, Soul Release really isn't going to do anything at that point. You need to be able to do it in a way where you banish a lot of the graveyard and they're not pressuring you super hard. So there's just too many conditions for this card to be good in my opinion. And next, Pulling the Rug. So this card, if they are playing the transformation side, I think this card's actually really good. It hits the 3 Caius and 2 Breaker. Some builds are even playing 3 Breaker. So it like insulates your other floodgates. Hitting Caius and Breaker is really, really strong to that. The issue is it's Pulling the Rug against frogs. It's the classic, it stops Caius and Breaker, doesn't stop Substitute Unifrog. It's a free target for Unifrog, so I don't think it's like impactful enough. Sure, if you have room to justify it for other matchups, you could potentially side it in, knowing they're going to transformation side. But I feel like really good Fishborg players might, like, if you go game 2 and Pulling the Rug them, they might just be like, oh, this guy's siding Pulling the Rug for me, I'm just going to go back to my regular build and not even bother with the Caius Breaker stuff. I haven't tested enough yet to know, but that's just my theory. And then next I have D-Fissure, Macro, Banisher. These cards are all in here in B tier because they actually hurt the deck a lot in my opinion. However, you kind of need to draw them early because if they've already gone off, it's kind of easy for them to play around it. Like if you do it early before they've applied any pressure, started their board or anything at all, I think it's actually really good. But like let's say they have a dupe block on the field already and like a bunch of frogs in a graveyard. Sure, summoning a D-Fissure or Banisher or activating D-Fissure Macro would help if they go Substitute or Fishborg later, but I feel like they should have resources to play around it. So I don't think it's like that good. But if you're playing like GBs or like, I don't know, 6 Samurai, some other weird stun deck that can take advantage of these cards that are already siding them for other matchups anyway, you might as well side it for this deck. Next, Kaiser Coliseum. So I've never seen this card being used in Edison format before, but if your deck, I don't know, if your deck could use it, I don't think it's that bad. That being said, I don't think there's many decks that can use this card efficiently, but I'm probably missing one. There's so many decks in Edison, but yeah, this card in theory is actually like kind of good. And then Vortex, just another generic card. It's actually like not that impactful in my opinion because you need, if they're synchroing off on you, you're probably dead. And that's like really the main use case besides hitting dupe block. But there's other cards for dupe block. But this card's like a generic card that you might be siding for other matchups already anyway, so I put in this tier. And the next, Transmigration Prophecy. So DD Crow is just better. Banishing the Fishborg or Treeborn or Avarice targets or whatever is just better because they can cycle through their deck so much with Avarice and Salvage. And Substitute can bring back other frogs. The only benefit this card has over DD Crow in my opinion is that if you chain onto Salvage, you actually hit both targets. That being said, you kind of have to just set it preemptively then, which really, really sucks. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend signing this card probably. But if you really want it against like Vayu and you just need a slot against Forgs, it's not the worst card. And then the last card I have here is Big Burn. So the shouts to Chef Taku for this one. This card basically says if your opponent targets a card in their graveyard, you can chain this card and then you banish all monsters from both players' graveyards. So in theory it's pretty good. Because if they Avarice or if they Salvage, you just chain this and banish the crap out of everything. That being said, I think it's way too niche and kind of too situational, but I think it was a funny card to include. Okay, so going with the C tier, I have Mirror Force and Bottomless here. You should probably be siding out these cards in your deck against frog decks in general. Battle Traps aren't really going to do anything against Caiuses and Breakers. Sure, you can stop a Unifrog, but it's like whatever. Caius and Breakers are getting their pluses, so I don't think it's consistent enough at all. That being said, if you're playing like a lot of stun monsters, like if you are playing Jowgen, False Dyna, and I don't know, King Tiger and stuff, there is maybe a little merit to keeping in Battle Traps, but it really depends on your build. Bottomless is a little better than the Battle Trap since Bottomless still hits Caius and Breaker. By hitting Breaker, you insulate your other trap cards and floodgates. However, then you have to play into Heavy Storm by setting multiple back row, and they could just always Unifrog at the end of the day. There is a mind game, though, that the Frog player knows that you're not playing Bottomless. They're going to start targeting all your back rows with Caius, so There's that little mind game going on, but overall, I'd still feel like you should probably side it out. Next, Threatening Roar and Battle Failure. I've seen some people talk about these two cards because you can just huddle all your resources, wait for them to overextend into you, and then crack back. The problem is you have to be able to crack back very, very efficiently and almost just win the game straight out, because if you don't, the Frog player still most likely has enough resources to crack back again. Like if you are really draw passing, like playing a really passive game because you think you're safe with Fade or Threatening Roar, I feel like they could combo off twice. So there's too many conditions, in my opinion, for this card to be like super good. Your crackback has to be insane, and they have to not be able to crack back your crackback. But if you're huddling cards, I don't know if that's really realistic. Next, Zombie World. So I don't know if people realize, like, this card says Tribute Summon. It stops Tribute Summons, not tributing. So Substitute and everything still goes off. So I don't think this card's like that good. And then like if they transformation side, sure, it stops Caius. But that's really about it. So it's definitely not worth it. Like signing in one card to hit 3 cards is just pretty mid. And then Necro Valley. I don't know if this is a meme, but unless you're playing Gravekeepers, I don't think you can really side this card. Keep in mind, in Edison format, Necro Valley does not stop Treeborn. It does not stop Fishborg. So it's really only stopping Avarice and Salvage, which are good cards, but then I'd rather just play like, you know, Anti-Spell or something else that stops all those cards in general. I'd rather just play another card above. And then for the D tier, goes in match. Dude, everything's a water. What are you doing? They can just make Brio anyway. They can still Caius. Like, what are you doing, bro? Don't play this card. DNA surgery / DNA transplant. Some people I've seen meme about, oh, you could play DNA surgery, or I forget which one's which one's attribute and which one's type, but you could go like DNA surgery, call machines, and then summon Cyber Dragon. And I'm like, bro, you're trying to side in 2 side cards for a combo that only works when you draw both your side deck cards. Like, I'd rather just draw 2 other side deck cards that are actually good, like individually. So I don't think that's really good. That's not very consistent Yu-Gi-Oh in my opinion. Kaiku. So people, like, there's this like mindset that Kaiku is good against Frog decks, but really it's only like really good against Hero Frog because it's also a floodgate against Miracle Fusion. I don't think this card's really that good against Fishborg. It's very easy for them to set up a dupe lock or just set a dupe frog, and like, how are you getting through that? So I don't think this card is worth it. You really need to be able to, like, there better be a really good justification in your specific deck to play Kaiku if you're gonna play Kaiku. I just don't think it's worth it in general. And then Fiend Comedian, dude, if you play Pokemon card game, you know how bad flip cards are. Like, they have to be insane for you to like play flip cards. Like, they're literally 50-50. I hate 50-50s. I tend, like, a card has to be at least good 80% of the time, in my opinion, to be worth it. So I don't, this card's just ass. This is a meme, don't play it. With that being said, guys, let me know what you think about my list, or if I missed any cards. I'm sure I have. In my last video with Giga, plenty of people have told me, oh, you forgot this card, this card, this card. Yeah, so let me know if I forgot anything. There's probably a few good cards that I've missed out there. I don't think I missed anything really like that could be an S tier though, so I really think like my S tier is pretty solid. But yeah, again, let me know. Thanks for watching. Peace.